What is up, my friends? Welcome back to my channel. Hi if you're new here, hi if you're not. Welcome back to my series where I interview people who have come out on the other side of the coaching industry. This interview today is absolutely wild, so buckle up. We're going to be talking about how much money this individual spent. We're going to be talking about the culty tactics that are used in this industry. We're going to talk about the indoctrination that we often find ourselves in when we are caught in the thick of the coaching coaches pyramid. So if you're someone who has been directly impacted by this industry, maybe you're considering investing in a coaching program, or maybe you just find this content to be really, really interesting, I think that you should sit down, grab a snack, grab some water. This is a long one, so buckle up, and we're going to go ahead and jump right in after I give a huge shout out to my channel VIP members. Thank you so much for being here. If you're interested in learning about my channel membership, you can click the join button down below. Enough talking. Give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not already. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So welcome and thank you so much for coming on here to share your story. I think these conversations are incredibly valuable in allowing people who have been affected by this industry to feel like they have a safe space to come to and feel seen and heard. I think a lot of the times when we're kind of caught up in the coaching industry, we get disconnected from reality in a sense. And so it's nice to see that we're not alone in the chaos that is coaching. So you can feel free to start your story from wherever you want. I'm so excited to get into this convo.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess I'll start at the beginning. The thing is I liked the idea of life coaching before it was like really blowing up, maybe around like 2016, 15, 16. I hadn't heard of a lot of people going into it, right? But I didn't think that I could life coach because I was like, I don't have a certification, I don't have a psychology degree, I don't have anything, no credentials, right? Little did I know, you don't need credentials to be a coach. However, I decided to like start creating this program instead, and the program was like based around teaching makeup artists how to like get into the production side of makeup artistry. So that was the first program I created. I hired this coach. I actually thought her pricing was pretty fair. She was maybe the only non-white coach that I hired throughout my entire time working with coaches. No, I'm sorry, I hired one other woman. And she helped me build out my program. She actually delivered exactly what she said she was going to deliver, and I decided not to launch what I had created. So after that had happened, I started listening to podcasts, and I came across the Life Coach School podcast. And I know you've talked about it on your show before, but it's really captivating. The way that she does the podcast can really get you hooked quickly. And I was also going through a time in my life where I was experiencing a lot of depression, and I had gone like in and out of cycles of depression throughout my life. So it wasn't anything super new to me, but finding coaching at the same point as this happening was kind of like, it was like the perfect moment for me to like fall into the whole thing that is the life coaching industry. And so I'm like, okay, this is cool. I'll pay for a life coach. But really, what I did was pay for the program, which was $300 at the time. I think it's $300 now, called Self Coaching Scholars. And I actually found it really helpful. And the thing I liked about it was giving me a new way of thinking. Little did I know or realize that whole group of people who goes into self-coaching scholars is really a pool of like candidates or applicants that end up going through the life coaching program.
Warm leads, baby. We're all about those warm leads.
And the amount of warm leads, I wish I still had the login so I could take you through it. That would be fun. I think you might like that, but I don't. I'm no longer a part of it. Anyhow, I stayed in that program for about maybe 7 months. And I think it's interesting being in there, you kind of see that parallel between the MLM world and the coaching world, because she actually calls the people who've been in the program for like 3 years her diamond scholars, right? You get like named, yeah, there are ranks that you get for staying in the program longer.
Oh my God. I didn't realize that. I hadn't read anything on Reddit about that. That is like definitely a tactic, in my opinion, to get people to continue to stay, because you have that sense of recognition. You feel special, I'm seen, Brooke or whoever is recognizing that I'm dedicated to this program. Wow, that is wild.
It's crazy too, because you'll get like a plaque, right? They'll have like these business workshops, or I don't know what they would call them for the self-coaching scholars, but I remember going to like these conference like things with a bunch of people going through the program, and you definitely get recognized and like win awards. It's really crazy. Like you would never win an award for being in therapy for like 3 years. You know what I'm saying? It's not like something that happens. So it's like it's the first questionable thing. And I'm like, why do I want to, like, what is making me want to stay here? Anyways, I couldn't question myself at that point. At that point, I was super gung-ho, right? Like I was into it.
And that's what I was going to say is like, I think when you're in that position, it doesn't seem weird. It like seems exciting because you're like, oh yeah, I'm putting in all this work, I am dedicated and I'm being recognized for my efforts. So it's very twisted.
Mm-hmm. So especially when Brooke like recognizes you, right? If she actually coaches you on camera in front of everybody, because they're all group coaching calls. At that point in time, there wasn't any one-on-ones. They include that now in the package of like $300 a month. Anyhow, I decided to go into life coaching program to become a certified life coach. By this point, I realized, or Brooke had said it somewhere on her podcast or inside of the actual program, that you don't need a certification to be a life coach. However, she calls, I don't know if you know this, she calls the life coach school coach certification program the Harvard of life coaching certifications. Yeah, you know about this.
Yeah, because in her eyes, she doesn't see value in the ICF, the International Coaching Federation. And so she essentially created the life coach school as like this is even better. And if you want to be like a real life coach, you'll take this program specifically.
Yes. Yes. I did like pretend like I was going to look into these other programs. I might have done it because of my partner at the time. I didn't want to seem like I was just, going for the most expensive one. But her program for becoming certified was $21,000 US.
And what year was this?
This was in might have done it 2018 or 2019. I can't remember at this point.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I wonder if it's even more expensive now. I would assume it is because they all have to, increase their value to charge their worth. So
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was closer to like 24,000 or 25.
Something like
that
that.
is wild.
like even now realizing, like looking back at all the other coaching programs that I could have done a $3,000 one, but I picked this like 21,000. I took out loans to do it. I liquidated my, what did I have? Like I had a 401k. I took money out of that. And it's the wild thing about going into debt for this profession was it's the Harvard of life coaching. You're getting the top tier education. You're gonna, be able to build a business or find a job when you get out. And so all the justification I needed was there. And so I went through the program, and I had this feeling while I was going through the program. I'm like, they do test you, like, they test so that they can certify you. I'm like, they're not testing us. I'm like, they're going to certify everyone. There's no one they're going to fail in this program. I just had that knowing, still didn't tip me off. I still stayed in coaching for maybe the next 2 years, 2.5 years. But I paid for that program. I paid for, while I was still going through coach certification, I paid for a sales program from a coach. I don't know if you've talked about yet on your podcast, but definitely somebody you should look into. She's
on the list.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Got some stories.
I get lots of emails about her. So
perfect. Yeah. So I went through her lower tier program, which was $2,000 for the lower tier program, while I was still in coach certification, because she's one of the coaches that Brooke recommends you to take programs from, because something's happening there. Her and Brooke have some sort of a partnership. I have no idea what happens, right? It's kind of like that pyramid scheming thing where Brooke's like, I recommend this person, and then this person for this weight loss, and then this person for this other thing that you need too,
And they all have like referral codes to each other's programs. So they're probably getting like a kickback from every referral. Undisclosed, of course, because we don't follow the rules. We just make money.
Yeah, it's really wild because I was like, why would I need to to take a sales training program if I was already in the life coach school's coaching program that she said, you know what I mean? You're going to get the business. You can go out either on the business track or on the applied coaching track. And I chose the business track. I just didn't follow through with it because after you've gone through the certification, they don't like keep up with you to make sure you're going through with the track that you've chosen. You can drop off at any point in time. And I know a lot of people who do that too, because it's not super, I don't want to use the word like intensive, but it just, I don't know. I didn't feel like I was learning much more than I was learning on YouTube, to be honest, you know? So at that point, it was like 21 plus 2,000 for program. Then one of these coaches, I'm like about to total up some crazy numbers here, I'm realizing. So one of the coaches under, you see how it's already a pyramid scheme, who is part of her higher tier program, which they pay $25,000 per round to join, per round. So that's 2 times a year or 3 times a year. I don't remember.
So you're paying $25,000 for like 4 to 6 months approximately.
Yeah, exactly. So anyhow, one of her coaches in that higher tier program was selling even more hands-on marketing. So I was like,
and sorry,
okay.
So this is a student of
a student of, and I come across her marketing because I'm in that circle now. So here's the thing, right? Like when you get into the circles with these coaches, you're kind of like, oh, which coach lineage do I come from?
So it's funny you're bringing this up. Someone that I interviewed a couple of months ago actually took the time to sit down and start mapping out the pyramid. So the top is obviously like Tony Robbins, Brooke Castillo, like all of the big names. And then you have, and it's so funny to see how quickly, exactly what you're saying, how quickly it's like, oh, this person's connected to this person's connected to this person. And then these two have this coach. And it's just like, it is literally a pyramid.
Oh, totally. They draw it sideways so you can't tell because, you know.
Exactly. It's not a pyramid. It's a sideways lineage, actually.
Yes, exactly. It's a career trajectory. It's a path. But yeah, no. Anyhow, so I ended up working one-on-one with this coach that was one of his students. So at the same time I was in the sales training program, I decided to take the marketing program, which was a one-on-one program with this coach. Is a little bit after I had graduated from coach certification. That coach's program was $5,000. Where am I getting? I have no idea, right? Like, I don't know where I was getting that money. Maybe I was putting it on credit cards. Like, I can't actually remember. I know how I got the money to pay for program. Funny that you mentioned her. But that was not in the same year. So at that point, I was already like 21, 22, 23 plus $28,000 in before having my own actual business. $28,000 before even starting my business.
You had made 0 and you had spent 28,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the rhetoric, right, is like, you gotta like spend money to make money, and all the coaches are like, well, I invested this much before I even made a dime, and it's like this badge of honor to have spent this much money on your education or on coaches.
And it's an investment in yourself. So if you really love yourself, you would spend the money that you deserve to spend.
Oh my God, I'm so offended by that. Like, it's an investment in yourself is so backwards and like gaslighty. It
Exactly.
makes my blood boil.
I'm like, every time I see an Instagram post that says something, I'm like, I could go to town on this, but I'm going to bite my tongue and save it for YouTube.
So good. This is such a good outlet. But anyway, so I go through that program. I finally start selling, right, my own. So I did actually start making money by this point at the $28,000 point. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it was like I'm in this much debt, so I have to catch up with myself and I have to make money somehow. But I remember my first couple of coaching clients, it felt like I was really helping them. I'm not gonna lie, right? Like none of us go into this because no one's inherently evil going into the life coaching, like career track, whatever trajectory. But those two clients, in my heart of hearts, I felt like I was really helping them. And my pricing was still, I think I was charging like 2,000 for 6 months, which seemed like reasonable to me. And then I don't even know how I keep on like doing this, but I hire another coach who is the student of student. So it's like we got Brooke, we got student, we got the next coach who's her student. So I've hired all of these coaches already.
It's important to note, especially for the people that are watching this that aren't or haven't been directly involved in the coaching industry, there's also this narrative beyond the just like invest in yourself that you constantly need mentorship. You should never go through a period of time where you don't have a mentor. That's what you're essentially taught. And so it makes sense to me as someone who understands this, listening to your story, to hear you say like, oh, I don't know why I kept investing. It's like, because you're told that you're going to fail if you don't have a mentor. And so you're like, okay, well, I better keep spending thousands of dollars, I guess.
Oh my God, that's actually it's so true. And it's never said it in that way, right, Danielle? It's like you hear coaches say, well, I never go without a mentor. So it's not like you're being taught directly, hey, you should always have a mentor so that you know how to make money and blah, blah, blah. It's like coaches bragging about how much they've spent on their mentor. They're like, well, I spend this on my mentor every year, or like spend $50,000 every. I'm like, you could be buying Teslas, you could be buying stocks, you could be, there's so many things you could, I don't know. There's just so many
Have a
things.
down payment on a house. There are literally coaches I know who I follow and have followed for long times. And not to say that like renting is bad or anything, but they talk about these aspirations of like wanting to own property and whatever, but then they're still renting, but then they're flexing about how they spent $250,000 last year on mentorship. And I'm like, you realize you could have put a down payment on a house at that point. Like, what are your priorities?
Oh my goodness.
But you don't see it when you're in it. You don't see it.
No. I was just like, oh, I really like this coach. And it's like, I'm really, there's that whole thing about like sitting in people's energy. I like this coach's energy. What are you talking about? What do you mean? Like you're absorbing money because you're now sitting in my energy field? Like, first of all, no, you're not. We're talking to each other through a plastic or glass screen, whatever it is, on two sides of a country, right? It doesn't even make any sense. That like sentence makes no sense. So anyhow, I hired this next coach, and I'm making decent money by this point, and I start to figure out that the thing that I'm supposed to do isn't learn what the coaches are teaching, it's do what the coaches are doing, right? It's not, oh, let me figure out like how to work their program, which is the thing that they all sell. Like if you follow all the steps to my program, then you're gonna make $10,000 in 6 months. You're gonna make $10,000 in 1 month. It's gonna, you know what I mean? All of that stuff. But I started watching what they were doing. Now, this is the part that's like kind of embarrassing to me because I don't like to admit, I feel really bad about admitting that I started using what they were doing, right? I didn't realize it was manipulative. And I didn't realize that what I was doing was like pulling people in that same way, like preying on people's like weaknesses,
their pain
insecurities, their pain points, right? And I started writing that same way in my Facebook posts and, you know, Instagram. Instagram didn't even have reels by that point yet. It was mostly posts that we would be doing. And I started a business with now a really close friend of mine, which is great. Like we made it out alive. We made it out of there alive, you know. But when I think about some of the things that I started doing to like attract clients, it's totally manipulative. And I just didn't even realize I was doing it. I was just like, oh, this is just how you make money, you know? And then I realized, because like I said, I coached two people who I thought I did a good service for. And then I slowly started shifting my business into coaching coaches. because if
Okay,
you
and
want
that's
to
what I
make
was going to
money,
ask. Your
mhm,
first two clients, those were like actual life coaching clients.
mhm,
They weren't like business owners or anything.
no,
Okay.
they weren't business owners. It was for coaching around like relationship with parents, coaching around relationship or like dealing with grief, right? So like two different types of life coaching clients. And it started feeling really hard to market for that. And I don't know who the first life coach was who hired me to coach them on their business, but I don't even think I was business coaching at that point. But because we're all taught to find a coach to be our mentor if we're running a coaching business,
Hmm.
it's like they started finding me. And then once I formed it was like the alliance. It was an alliance, a business partnership with my friend. We started selling coaching to coaches. And I am going to admit this, like some of the program stuff that we wrote, we literally wrote it like 20 minutes before we jumped on live with the people that we were teaching, you know? And it was, I mean, aside from being not well thought out or coming from any real expertise, it was just, well, all we're doing is teaching how to do what we did, which is sell. So all you're doing, right, is teaching people how to sell in the same way that you sold. And when I look back at it, it was like we were using emotions, like, touching on these like very vulnerable points in people's lives, encouraging people to borrow money and like use debt to pay for the program. And of course, they were going to get it back because we were, oh my God, one of the programs that I ran, we were guaranteeing people would double their investment. And I don't really remember how we were guaranteeing that because I don't remember if we had it written out somewhere or not. But it was just like, how was it guaranteeing that you were going to double your investment? That's insane. Looking back on that, I would have never done it now, knowing what I know. I mean, the people were happy who came out at the very end, but that's another thing that happens in coaching, right? As long as you can make your client happy, happy and results are two different things. And this is something that I see over and over again. Well, they finally started feeling really aligned and really good about what they were selling. And I'm like, that's not a result though.
But my mindset is so
Yeah.
much better. I feel so much better on the inside and more confident in what I'm offering. So therefore, it was worth the $5,000.
It's like, what? My mindset is so much better. This is the thing, right? Like the whole, how do you even describe like mindset to someone in a way where it makes sense to like sell it to them for like $10,000 or whatever? Like, come get your mindset upgraded for, it's only $10,000 for 6 months of coaching or whatever it is. Anyway, during this time, so me and my friend were running our business. We both decided we were going to go into a program with. I had no idea who she was. Have you watched any of her stuff?
I actually didn't know who she was. Even when I was like fully in the coaching industry, I had never heard of her until I started making content on YouTube and I started mentioning a few people that work like under her. And people were like, oh, well, her mentor is. And I was like, who is this? So then I went down this like Reddit rabbit hole, but I've never really consumed any of her content.
I have some of her content. We have to figure out how I can share with you so you can see it. But it's like, it's it's like she's very convincing and a really good storyteller, right? But I have no idea how I watched like maybe three master classes and then was without talking to anyone on the phone. So I didn't have any consultation call with her at all or any of her team. I bought a $10,000 program. Literally, it was like boom, boom, boom. Okay, now let me buy this. It just kind of like speaks to where I must have been in at that point in my life where I was like, okay, to be able to like spend this money on a
And I
program.
wonder too, from your experience, because I had a similar experience as well. At that point, had you already kind of been like exploring different programs, maybe like not ones you had purchased, but I know like in my case, I had gotten on a few sales calls with other coaches that felt like it wasn't a right fit. So that when I found this one sales page of this coach who like sounded exactly
Mm.
like me and exactly what I needed, I immediately was like, oh, like, here's my credit card. You don't even need to sell me because I'm already sold. And so I wonder if it was a similar experience.
Oh, okay. So thank you for jogging my memory. This is what actually happened at that point in time. I started getting a little, what's the word, like rebellious, maybe, I guess, what was going on in the life coach school because it was so like rigid in the way that they would coach people. What I mean by rigid is like it was very non-emotional, which I didn't like, and I didn't realize was also probably closer to therapy than what was going on the other end of the life coaching like spectrum, right? Where it's all like energy and flowiness and feminine and emotion. So it's almost like we had these two polar opposite sort of vibes in the coaching industry. And because I was getting sick of this one, I was like, "Ugh, I gotta find some other group to start following and start working with, right? Because I need a mentor, because everybody needs a mentor. So I stop over here with the life coach school pyramid and I start moving this way into the pyramid. And so I take that course, and it's crazy to come out of a life coaching course not realizing what skills you've gained. Like, what skills did I gain from spending $10,000 on the 6 month program? Like, what skill set do I have now? Because that price was for all of her monthly programs that she runs. And I know she runs something that teaches you how to become a coach and teaches you how to like sell coaching and teaches you all this stuff, but I don't know how much of the stuff I actually implemented, and I don't know how much I remember, except for this is when I really started watching how she sold, right? Like how her storytelling like takes you down this road of emotions and then leads you to her next program, whatever that might be, you know? And I mean, we talk about like selling you on her next program or on her masterminds while you're in this like lower tiered offer. Her $10,000 program was like the lower tiered offer, right? Because her masterminds are like, I mean, at the point when I was looking at them, so around 2019, 2020, they were like $7,777 a month. I remember the one that I wanted to join was $7,777 a month. And I was justifying it in my brain, like, well, if I'm starting to make like at least $15,000 a month, then I can live. Like, why am I splitting my revenue with this one coaching program? You know what I mean? Like, what is going on there? But I didn't end up, long story short, joining her mastermind. It was too much money, but I found her student instead. This is when you would think that I would start to figure out like that I have a pattern of doing that thing. This is what we all start to do, which this coach is too expensive. Let me see who coaches like them, you know? And so I join one of programs. And so I go into this program. I went in on like it was like a 12-month payment plan, I think. And I think maybe the program was around $2,000 total. I end up making money, so I was able to pay off that program right away. So there's these like boosts and dopamine hits that you get along the way that keep you addicted to what's going on, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, well, I made that money back. So let me reinvest it in my business. And I end up going through her program that's similar to Melanie's, where it's like you pay for this collective. She calls it the collective, right? And I pay for the collective, and I don't remember how much it was. I just remember how much I paid her total, which was somewhere around $25,000 because I ended up joining one of her masterminds 3 times.
Yeah, so right now she charges somewhere between like 12 to 15,000 US for the year for the collective, but I don't know, back then it probably was a little bit less.
Yeah, I'm guessing maybe it was around 10-ish, also similar to what I was charging, or maybe a little bit less. When I like went into her space, I was like, what she's teaching is so simple. And here's the thing, right? You start to justify, like, well, since it's so simple, I should be able to do it. So then I start modeling, right, like that sort of business structure where I'm like, okay, I'll just sell this program and I'll try to sell this program. It's exhausting. And at this point, I feel like I'm starting to get like kind of desperate in my coaching business. And I'm like, I can't do this forever. And not because of the way that the money was coming in or not coming in, but it like my energy level, like I'm a human. I need sleep. I need like a vacation. I'm like, what am I gonna wake up every single day and post the same thing on Instagram in different ways and forms, but I'm literally saying the same thing. I can't do this. So, and I'm just realizing like there's other coaches that I'm hiring along the way that aren't like these gigando amounts of money that I still am hiring, right? So I don't know how much money we're at this point, but like there's more woven in other coaches. And it's this whole like manipulation that you kind of get from people's marketing. It feels unethical when you can see it from the other side, but while you're in it, it feels good. It's like, oh, they get me. Finally somebody who understands like me and who understands where I'm coming from. And I want to, you know, it's almost like they're selling this dream of you don't have to work that much to make a lot of money.
And a lot of them literally say that in their marketing. It's like, I'm going to teach you in this program how to make $10,000 and work 4 hours a week. And all you got to do is follow my 5-step formula. And it's like, red flag. But when you're in it, you're like, oh, that sounds good. I want to do that.
Yeah. It started catching on to like that whole thing where I'm like, wait a minute. Like in one of the masterminds I was running, right? I was like, I had a client or a student who was totally like, fuck the hustle, like not into like working hard. And so she created her whole brand around that idea. And I'm like, wait a minute. It's one of the things that you have these like light bulb moments where you're like, wait a minute, if I actually listen to what this person is saying, like, yes, no one should be working themselves to the bone, right? Like, I don't believe that we need to be lacking in sleep to be able to live. Like, I really don't think that that's the way that this is supposed to be working, life in general. However, like, what do you be like, how is your brand centered around not working? It doesn't make any sense. Who's going to pay you? Like, what service are you even providing? And so I realized I had put myself into a hole because I was selling that sort of idea too, you know? And so then when your students come back at you kind of with this, and they're not coming back in a way where it's like they're coming at you, they're coming back in a way where they're like, yeah, and I don't believe in the hustle either. And I think we should all work less. And it's like, wait a minute, but you still have to do the work. So how are you supposed to explain this? You know what I mean? It's like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Like everything starts to sound really made up because it is. It all starts to sound too good to be true because it is. And like, how do you upkeep this sort of like energy around like constantly working and just pumping people for their money and then them walking away, the majority of them walking away, right? Because I think I've heard you say the statistic before where like what percentage of coaching businesses don't work after the first year, whatever it is, like how many of us end up closing down our businesses because it doesn't actually work, you know?
Exactly. And I think that that's like the rebuttal that I get in the comments a lot is like, oh, well, I hired a coach and it worked for me. And it's like, no, if you look at the actual statistics, the majority of people will like ride out to the end of their coaching program, try it for a few months, but then they fizzle out and it never ends up, they don't get a monetary return on their investment. Sure, maybe they have a better mindset and they feel good about themselves, but it's like, was that really worth $10,000? Like, I could have just went to therapy for that same result.
That's the thing, right? Where it's like, if I had $1 for every time I'm like, you don't need, and I remember thinking this to myself, another thing that I'm embarrassed about, but I would be coaching some of my clients in a mastermind, and I'd be listening to them because we would do like voice coaching over Voxer, which now I had to remove it from my phone. It's like Voxer trauma. Anyhow, I remember listening and I'm like, oh, I don't have the tools to help you here. This is actually something that should be talked about with a therapist because we're not talking about a coaching business right now, and in these spaces that are supposed to be safe spaces where they can all share, everyone can share. It's it's like this, it's like we're all running around unsupervised and no one's there to like, call it, be like, hey, listen, guys, this is not what we're all here to do. We're here to like learn how to sell coaching to other coaches. And you're right, what you're bringing me right now is too much that I don't know how to actually handle what it is that you're bringing me. Like chronic things about chronic illness and like really deep depression or SI or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And like to be able to understand that no matter how trauma informed you are as a coach, you still didn't go through 4 years of psychology in your education and then get like your master's degree in whatever it is to become a therapist. Like we went through 6 months at most of us, of a training program that's being taught to us by people who did the same thing as we did. They weren't, I'm not being taught to be a life coach by a trained licensed therapist, None of us were.
Brooke Castillo literally says that she took a weekend long course to become a life coach.
Yes.
And now she has this multi-million-dollar empire where she's just like pumping out life coaches. So it's like that in itself is a red flag to me.
It's a whole red flag. I'm inside this group called the Coaching Posse. Have you been in there? Has anybody taken you inside of these places?
I'm in a few groups. I'm not in that one.
That one is life coach school only. People can go into it. And I mean, you have a little bit of debate in there. And I just completely stopped. I mean, I try not to pay attention to it because it's really triggering at this point. But it's like people can feel that something is changing in the life coaching industry, but I want to be like, hey guys, this is what it is. Guess what? We're all wising up. You know what I mean? Like you cannot just continue to like churn out this weird money making machine that's super manipulative to the people who are selling it to. It doesn't feel good. And at the end of the day, no matter how much money you have in your bank account, all of the people that you were supposedly helping and where you put them after they've gone through your programs, it starts to feel like something. It becomes emotional for us. We're humans, and most of us went into this industry trying to help people. When you realize like, oh crap, did I, and you ask yourself the question, did I actually help that person? Um, Sometimes it's like I want to turn around and apologize to some of my past clients, not because I did anything mean, but because I realized like the sales tactics that I was using, not realizing that they were sales tactics, telling them or teaching them to do things with their business, not because I thought it was super in alignment for them, or I don't even know what that means. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know if it was going to work for them, but like this is what I did, so this is what should work for you, believing that if they did what I did, it should work for them too. Because, like, I didn't do it, and none of us do it because we have any proof that it works. We're just hoping, and we're selling them on something, and they've been sold, and so now it's on them. Now it becomes their responsibility if they can't sell,
And that's the biggest piece too. And I see this, especially with a lot of these like larger name coaches, they'll make posts about, just because you didn't get the results you wanted, you weren't scammed. You need to take ownership for the fact that you consciously made this investment and maybe you didn't put in the work and maybe like it's on you. And they try to like pass the buck back to the people that didn't get the results they were promised. When in my opinion, the reality is half the time these coaches aren't qualified to be offering those promises in the first place. Like you said, they're just kind of crossing their fingers and hoping that what worked for them is going to work for the client as well. And then when it doesn't, they're like, well, not my fault.
Oh man, it's so wild. It's just wild. Like I don't know. I want to think that maybe something's happening where the life coaching industry is just going to start fizzling. But I don't know. MLMs are still like moving forward, right? Like I did do a loose total of what I actually ended up spending, and it was close to like $92,000, maybe close to $100,000 on coaching.
You could have bought a Tesla.
Yeah.
I could have bought a Tesla. I could have been like, I just started to get myself out of some major debt. And this is crazy because I was so ashamed of the amount of debt I had. I could not look at my bank account, you know? I was like, I couldn't believe because here's the thing, right? The money that you're bringing in, I'd be like making like five figure months. And this is how much I brought in last month. But like, you don't know how much is draining down the hole on this other side because I'm not telling you that story, you know, in my marketing.
And I think this is one of the big parallels too between like coaching and MLM is like, oh, you can make all this money and then you go and file your taxes at the end of the year and you realize like, oh, I actually was in the negative. But the piece with the coaching industry is exactly what you're saying is I see so many of these coaches, you know, I just hit a $60,000 cash month. I made multiple six figures this year. But then it's like, okay, but if you are telling me right now that a lot of these programs cost, you know, $25,000, $50,000 a year, okay, and you're hiring 4 or 5 mentors, of those multiple six figures that you made, how much did you invest in coaching? How much did you actually take home to be able to pay your bills and live your life? Like, I would guess the margins are pretty slim.
Yeah. And will we ever know until like we do something like this where the coaches are like willing to be like, hey, you know what I mean? Because I'm not gonna sit here and lie and be a hypocrite about I'm like telling you what I did, you know what I mean? And it's like I did make multiple six figures, but what happened to it? You know what I mean? Like what happened
Where
to
is it?
This coach is holding it. This coach has it. This coach has it. You know, it's not mine.
Exactly. And if you're not paying attention to, you know, okay, so I'm seeing all these clients sending me, you know, $10,000, $20,000 for their payments to my program. But then I'm also out paying, you know, the Brooke Castillos and of the world my $10,000, $20,000. If I'm not carefully, you know, like literally in my business, I sit down every Friday and I put in my expenses for the week and I put in my income and I balance my spreadsheet. If I'm not doing that, then I'm not going to know until it's tax time and my accountant's like, oh, Danielle, like your business actually cut a loss this year because you spent $40,000 on coaching. Like,
Yes. And here's the thing, right? Like this is something I love about your YouTube channel because you're out here trying to actually teach these things, right? That life coaches, or excuse me, business coaches, coaching coaches are like, well, we don't talk about that in the program, right? Like we don't discuss the taxes. Like we're not talking about your back end. You have to go figure out your back end by yourself.
hire an accountant.
Yeah, hire an accountant and a bookkeeper.
Which you should do, but if I'm a business coach, I should have some general knowledge into how to run a business.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy. I have like friend stories that I want to tell you, but like I want them to tell. It's so wild.
And get them to email me.
Yeah, totally. Coaches who what is it? They take credit for the work that their clients do, right?
Of course.
And so a friend of mine, quick friend story, a friend of mine paid for this high-end coaching program and had already made like multiple six figures in their business. And the coach starts, you know, because have you ever heard this saying where they're like, you know, like the best type of clients to onboard are the clients who are already making a lot of money, who are already successful. Like that's who you want in your programs. So this is a tactic, right? For coaches who are selling like these super high-end masterminds, they want people who are already doing the thing because then it takes the workload off of them and then they get to take the credit for how much more that these clients of theirs businesses are growing. Even though, for instance, brags all the time that she doesn't even use her coaching calls with. She's like, I pay for however $500,000 of coaching a year. She's like, and I haven't been on one Zoom call in like 4 months or something. I remember that was like a point of bragging, right?
Like a flex. I have so much money, I can just pay for things and not use them.
It was the weirdest thing ever. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, why do you have a mentor? Do you realize what mentor even means? Like, what is mentorship to you if this is what you're selling? So then she was encouraging, right, in a way, her students or clients.
To
Don't
then
contact me.
Exactly.
That's so bad. I must have missed that whole piece, but that is like absolutely wild.
Oh, watch out for it. It comes through. It's like, oh, I haven't had a call with my coach in like 4 months. And it's like, are you sure they're coaching you? Are we doing this through osmosis now? Like now
It's the
everyone's
energy.
psychic. Oh, that's all you need. Mhm.
I'm just paying for the energy.
I pay my coach to sleep with my picture up on her nightstand to make sure that our energies are combining. It's like it's actually insane when I think about it. I'm like, it's actually insane. So anyhow, yeah, this coach friend of mine went through one round of the program, this high-end program, and then had prepaid for another round, which by the way, if you're out there, if you're actually watching this and you're considering like paying ahead of time for a program that starts 4 months from now, do not do it. Don't. By the point of time where this coach friend decided that they weren't going to do that second round of the program, trying to get the money back was like,
Good luck.
oh my goodness. I was like, you about to be out $50,000 because of this. I'm like, how are these coaches who are pulling in like millions and millions of dollars refusing refunds for people who legitimately cannot like make that payment or do the course due to anything, health, family, you know?
Exactly. And this actually brings up a recent memory of mine. Someone reached out to me on Instagram in the DMs telling me their experience working with this coach who had essentially sold them on like a lifetime program. So I think the program was somewhere between like we'll say $6,000 to $8,000. But again, you get like lifetime access to these group calls and a website portal with all these course materials and whatever. Well, now I think that coach probably started the program a year or two ago. She wants to phase it out. So it's like, okay, but if I was sold on the promise that I have lifetime access to this program and now you're phasing it out, am I going to get a partial refund for, the next 20 years of my life that I thought I was going to have access to? Not to say you'd actually use it, but like the principle, right? Is that like, am I going to get that portion of the money back? Probably not, because I delivered on this service. Well, no, you didn't, because you told me it was going to be lifetime access and all I got was, 18 months of access. So where is the accountability in any of these when it comes to, refunds or not getting delivered the service that you were promised?
Yeah. It doesn't take into account that human beings change at all. Like it's weird to think that, okay, I'm never going to change. So I'm going to offer you lifetime access to anything that I do. Unless
It's naive.
it's like you can offer lifetime access to your YouTube channel, potentially, you know?
But again, maybe 2 years from now, I get over this and I'm like, I don't care about the coaching industry anymore. And I private all my videos. Well, then it's not lifetime access, right? Like I'm not interested in this anymore. So therefore, like I used to have a bunch of yoga videos on this channel. I privated them all because it's like, I'm not a yoga teacher anymore. That's irrelevant. So it's like, but I never made anyone pay me $7,000 for lifetime access to those YouTube videos. So it's like,
True. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a lot of, I have to say, like the storytelling in the coaching industry is up there. That's like the main skill, I want to say. If you learn anything, it's how to tell a really like what's the word? Like pitiful story.
one that like pulls on the heartstrings.
Yeah, totally. Totally. You're like, oh yeah, I not only feel sorry for what happened to that coach, but I have that story too. And so maybe they can teach me. And it's like, what are you looking for them to teach you? You know what I mean? Like how they're manipulating you into buying this program. It's like, teach me how to manipulate others into buying my program too. I don't know. I wish I could just like turn around and really be like, hey, listen, if you're considering, if you're considering this profession, consider therapy, like become a therapist instead. Like go into a business consultancy, work for an actual agency where they're doing things like learning to run Facebook ads for people's e-commerce shops. I don't know. You know what I mean? There's other ways to work in entrepreneurship and business and online rather than price gouging people for products that are so low on the delivery scale. I watched some of your like lives or your live streams where you're going through these crazy ass like master classes where the camera quality and the sound quality is
We're filming in their hallway and the camera's like tilted sideways and they don't even cut out the mistakes like to edit it. It's just like, pay me $10,000.
yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but that's another point, like another flex that would make was like everything she did was on her camera phone, her iPhone. And I mean, we were doing like masterclass calls in her bedroom. You know what I mean? Like no lighting, or if the lighting was there, it was bad lighting. Like the camera might have been like, like I'm on a webcam right now. It's not the best quality, but it might have been the webcam straight from her laptop. I don't know. The quality that you get from these programs where coaches are creating them in 5 minutes before the class actually starts is not right. Like how is that justifiable? Like what do you
But then that's a flex. That's a flex that they use. There are coaches that I'll follow on Instagram where they're like, hey, I'm in my bathrobe, just got off a client call. Like, I love my business because I get to serve my clients in the best way possible and I don't even have to try. And it's like, I don't think that that's giving the impression that you think it's giving. Like, I would be upset if I paid you $5,000 and you showed up in your bathrobe. Like, there should be some level of professionalism.
Oh my God. Yeah, I can't say that I had that happen to me yet, but still, it was pretty up there when, would see like sold everything through her iPhone. Totally. Like, did not get like a professional camera until I don't know how many years she had been doing it, but it was towards the end of the time that I was in her program. And she ended up going back to her iPhone. Here's the thing, right? Like, I don't know if you've heard this one, but something about the iPhone and not just iPhone, right? Like our smartphones and the vertical view of that video. If people are also watching on their phones, there's all this other piece of manipulation where you feel like you're talking to them on your own private FaceTime call. So it gives this other level of like, oh, I actually know this person. And then they're like, well, this is my nickname and you all can call, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, let me bring you closer so that you feel like you're getting what you paid for. Because what you're paying for, this is something else that says, is like proximity. You're paying for proximity to power. Like, what do you mean I'm paying for proximity to power? Like, I get more time to ask you questions for how many questions do I have in this moment? You know what I mean? To ask you. And even if I'm just asking you questions, it doesn't mean I'm learning from it, doesn't mean I'm actually gaining a skill, right?
Exactly. It's like this really twisted parasocial relationship where they want you to feel connected to them. So they give you slight details that make you feel connected. You pour your whole heart out. It's very one-sided because really at the end of the day, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know like the intimate details of their life, but they give you the impression that you're on this like other level with them.
Oh my
And
God.
to touch on the whole piece of the paying to be in proximity, I noticed this trend and I was sort of become privy to some information from someone that I know who there was this entrepreneur who's kind of in this circle. We haven't mentioned her yet, but she hosted this like dinner where you could come and pay, I think it was like $2,000 US to come to this fancy restaurant to be able to sit in a circle of other successful coaches and entrepreneurs and to be able to like ask questions. And from what I've heard, the questions people were asking were like, well, like, how do I like share my energy? Or it's just like fluffy questions that aren't like actually related to business, but they sell you on this idea that if you sit in a room with other people who are making six figures, you're just like through osmosis also going to make six figures. And it's like, okay, I understand the value of having friends and connections that are successful to show you what success looks like and to show you that it's possible for you and to maybe teach you things on how to get there. But you can do that for free by going to a networking event and making friends like we used to back in the 1990s when we didn't have cell phones and we had to actually talk to people. You don't need to pay rich people to learn how to become rich. Like, in no other industry would that ever be a thing.
That's the thing, right? Like, if you figure out, like, wait a minute, this literally doesn't happen in any other industry, it's huge red flags. Huge red flags. And I remember those questions being asked. I want to say I probably asked those questions, you know what I mean? About like energetics. What do you mean? It's like, you're selling me what? You're teaching me how to do what? Like, what am I energetically doing? Am I putting magic spells on people to come and buy my program? Like, is that what you're like? Come sit in my energy. First of all, I don't want anybody get out of my space, my personal space. Why are you trying to sit in my energy? I don't know. I don't know. The whole thing is like got a whole language on its own, right? Like this, what's going on is part of the indoctrination, right? Is like you learn this language, so you're part of the in crowd. And once you're in that space, like learning the manipulation tactics then becomes just part of the job. Where the closer you get to these coaches, I'm wondering, it's like, what are you being taught in those high-end masterminds? Like, not even masterminds, because I know they're like one-on-one with each other. I mean, I think it takes a Zoom call to be one-on-one with each other, but maybe it's just psychic interactions, in another dimension that they do. It's like a whole level that I didn't know about. This is the thing too. I always thought, like, and I'm pretty sure this is on purpose, that, oh, if I get into that higher level mastermind, right, like with that $7,777 mastermind with her, then I'll finally understand the thing that I'm missing for why I'm not making six-figure months, right? It's like, oh, I must just be missing something after spending almost $100,000 on coaching. I'm still missing something.
Yeah, it's like this constantly dangling the carrot and you're just on the treadmill, so you're never getting any closer.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of these programs are like literally ridiculous. He taught a program called Potent, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what's potent? It's like potent energy.
When you're in it though, I feel like I would read through these sales pages and I would be like, yeah, like that's exactly what I need. And now, like you've said, I'll do live streams and I'll look through these people's sales pages and watch their webinars. And I'm like, this is fluff. Like, you're not actually saying anything. You're just using a bunch of words that actually have no meaning.
I feel like there's a switch in your brain that goes off, right?
Exactly.
Because at this point, I cannot actually. Have you reviewed? I just realized. Have you reviewed Amanda Francis's work yet?
No, but in that pyramid I was telling you about earlier with the connections, she was also near the top as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because like Manifestation Babe is under Amanda Francis.
Oh, okay. And so is
yeah.
But then like surpassed her with her money. So yeah. I don't know where they are in the pyramid at this point. But there's another one where I'm like, oh my goodness, the quality of the videos in this one. I'm like, I want you to do one for your channel. I definitely have access to that program, but like, it's wild. Some of these programs were filmed in literally 2014, maybe almost 10 years ago, where the camera quality it's shoddy at best. You can barely hear what she's saying because the sound quality is super bad. And she's still selling this program for like $2,000, right? Like the original manifestation program. And like, why and how? And who's buying it anymore? And I'm like, but I did. So I realized like, it's still just like one moment you go from this mindset into this other where you realize it's like you've realized it, you're out of it, you can see it now. And you're like, okay, all of that stuff, you can just You don't need to be an expert at it. You're just like fluff, 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 fluff.
And again, I think that like the camera quality, the audio quality, the quality of the program delivery comes back to this idea of this coach in a bathrobe serving her client's program. They are all, and all of us that have been in it are convinced that like it's not how the program is delivered, it's delivering, you know, those life-changing transformations that matter. It's not how that life-changing transformation is brought to the client. And that's kind of like, so they find validity in the way that they do things, whether it's with, you know, a freaking camera that looks like your thumb or they're recording in a wind tunnel. It's like, it doesn't matter because my client is still transforming their life. And like, for me, that's a piece that has never sat well with me. I remember like back in 2018, I literally spent all the money I had to buy like a nice mirrorless camera so that the quality of my video looked good, because that was important to me. Whereas my coach might be like, well, that doesn't matter. You can just record on your iPhone. It's like, I think it does matter. But when you're in it, you don't see it.
When you're in it, you don't see it. That's the whole point, right? Like, and it's about finding more people who can't see it so you can sell to them before they figure it out. So like, how long does this go on? You know, like you got into it before I did and got out of it, sounds like, before I did. How long did it take for you to exit?
I would say probably around like the pandemic. So like 2020, I started to phase that portion of my business out.
Okay, yeah. I started to like really get into it around then. But like being in it, it just seems like it's so normal. It seems like, oh, of course, like this is where I am. You know what I mean? This is where I am in my personal growth journey, right? Like I want to be surrounded by like-minded individuals and other entrepreneurs. It's a whole thing.
Okay, cult. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
It's like it 100% is like that though. Like I remember when I first got sort of exposed to the industry, if you will, I was working my like 9-to-5 job. So this would have been like 2016, maybe early 2017. And I started listening to, you know, the Life Coach School podcast and all of these other entrepreneurs podcasts. And that was kind of my first exposure. Then I started joining all these Facebook groups because no one in my life was an entrepreneur. No one knew what the coaching industry was. So I made all these friends online that knew what was happening. And slowly you just start to surround yourself with this like group think mentality where we all believe the same things. We all see the validity in these programs and these offerings, and we convince ourselves that like, okay, this is going to be my key to success. This is what's going to get me out of this miserable, horrible situation that I find myself in. And the rest is history, right?
Yeah. This is the key to success. This is like, that's a thing, right? It's like the same people who probably should just find a really good therapist, you know, that are going to untrained high-end life coaches to whisk away whatever emotionally has got them bogged down. And it doesn't work like that. And we think that maybe it does because over here they talk about energy, and energy seems like it works faster than actually going through therapy and unpacking all of your trauma. But really that's not how it actually works. And it's like realizing that this is not how people learn either. Is just from a Q&A. People do not learn from a Q&A. They don't gain skill from not doing, right? Like you've got to actually have experience. You've got to actually do the thing. This is why like there's residencies, you know, when you go through professional like education where you're really learning how to handle people's shit, for lack of a better way of saying it. Like I just remember being given a tool like, well, you have to do a brain dump after you coach every client, and you got to just make sure that you're not taking any of their thoughts with you or whatever, however they would say it. So it's kind of like, make sure you're not then taking on what's going on with them. And I know therapists like hire therapists to help them with that. And so like that, right? Like that justification with coaches isn't the same because I don't ever remember talking to any of my coaches about like, yeah, transference. Like, I don't remember being like, hey, I really need help because I'm really stuck on this problem that my client spoke to me about and I don't know how to handle it, because we don't go there. We talk about money. So how do you make the next $10,000 month? You know, none of it is real. It's like you don't get your shit handled in that space.
No, because you're, again, and this is what comes up in my comments all the time with people defending coaching. Well, like, coaching isn't about the past. It's not about your actual experience. I'm just here to support you moving forward. So then it's like, well, then you can't use the excuse that a coach has a coach just like a therapist has a therapist, because those are serving two completely different purposes, and it's not the same.
Yeah. But anyhow, here we are, like, realizing, right, that this whole thing is a scam. And like, how do you, it's almost like you gotta go through the motion of forgiving yourself for having been part of it on so many levels, right? Like heal from the grief and like the shame, like what we were talking about beforehand, of like what comes with understanding that maybe you're a part of that manipulation cycle. But like owning up to it, I feel like is really the first step, you know? It's like,
100%.
okay.
And I think there's like, it's very cathartic in terms of like, one of the reasons I started this channel was, for me, it was like, I actually started making TikToks where I was like making fun of myself. So a lot of these posts from Facebook would show up on my Facebook memories and I would like be cringing. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to post this on the internet because I think other people will find this really funny, especially now. Like, I think back to those friends at that time who were like, Danielle, what are you doing? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Now I have that perspective. So I read these Facebook posts and I'm like, I don't even talk like this. Like, why was I posting this? And so then from there, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to openly share this story on YouTube, because exactly like you just said, I had so much shame with the fact that I had spent, and like, I think at the end of the day, I probably spent somewhere close to like $8,000 to $10,000. But that big investment of like $4,500, there was so much shame around that I didn't tell anyone until like 4 years after it had happened. And then finally I was like, okay, I want you to guess how much money I spent. And they would be like, oh, like $500, thinking that's a big amount of money. And I'm like, like, let's go. And it's like, once it was like out there and I was like, this is a dumb mistake in retrospect that I made. But at that time, it didn't seem dumb. It seemed really valuable and important to me. And so I empathized with that version of myself that was in that place that made that decision. And I think that if we can come to kind of accept that, like, we have more knowledge now than we did at the time when we obviously made those investments. And so kind of letting ourselves, like you said, like, let go of that and grieve that period of who we were, those hopes that we had to build whatever it was we were trying to build at that time. There's definitely something like therapeutic about having these platforms to talk about and share our stories. And I mean, people do it on Reddit. You know, you find whatever outlet works for you. You do an anonymous interview, whatever it is. I think it's really important to allow yourself that opportunity and that space to have those conversations.
Oh yeah. It's like, I mean, I could talk about it amongst friends, right? And like right now, it's mostly just the friends who are in the industry with me and who can see or have gotten out themselves, like what the hell was going on there, you know? And I don't know how long it really takes, but at this point, it's like at least I feel at least open to talking about it. And I'm just like hoping that somebody hears this and is like, okay, maybe this is not my what do they call it? It's like what I'm meant to do. This is like
my life's purpose.
Yes, this is my life's purpose.
My life's purpose is to shut it down. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God. My life's purpose is to sell coaching to how sell coaching to coaches so that they can sell more coaching to coaches who don't need coaching. It's almost like, if this is really your life's purpose, like who wrote it? Like who gave that to you? Who bestowed that upon you? You know, like, and I am sorry, because all of that, what you feel in that space once you have that realization and you're still in it. I know you've done an interview with somebody who's like still really, really in it. Listening to them talk, I was like, oh man, I could not. At some point when I did shut down my business, I don't think I said this yet, but like I ended up shutting down my business because I was going through so much emotionally, not just from business, but other things in my life. Because, like I said, I'm a human, I'm trying to live a life outside of my career. I'm not just trying to make my life about my purpose of life coaching or whatever. And so when I had shut down my business, there was another depression there. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I thought life coaching was supposed to have healed all of this. Like, why am I still getting depressed? Right. And now that I don't have a mentor and now that I don't have a life coach, like, here's me realizing like the real way of healing isn't these avenues that I thought they were supposed to be when I had been in the coaching industry, right? They're not like, okay, get a mentor and everything's going to be okay. Like, spend another $5,000, $10,000 and everything's going to be okay. It's like, it's time to really heal. It's time to like go to therapy. It's time to like really talk about like what's happened in these spaces, and like really work it out in a way where you can understand it from another perspective and like really own your experience, or me own my experience. But that was not easy to just shut it down. I mean, I guess I wish it was and been like, I wish I could say like, oh yeah, I just shut my business down and then I went and got a job or I started another business, but I couldn't. I really didn't work for almost a year after everything had shut down.
And I think that's the hardest piece too, is like, because you aren't really taught any valuable skills, honestly, what do you do? Okay, I'm starting back at square one now. So, like, I was fortunate when I was in my position, I had my yoga business and coaching was kind of just like a component of that. So I left coaching and was able to focus on what was actually working and bringing in money. But a lot of people don't have that option. If you go full force into having this like successful coaching business and coaching doesn't work out, okay, well, what do I do? I don't have, it's not like I have a business degree where, okay, I can take those principles and apply it to, my next business venture. I had all this freaking fluffy feel good about myself energy. So maybe my confidence is a little bit higher, but I don't actually have tangible skills that I can now use to build the next thing. Right. So I'm interested to kind of hear, maybe you said you took like a year, like what was happening in that time frame that you weren't working?
I was lucky because my partner was able to take care of us. And I didn't have to really super worry about money. I mean, by no means are we rich at all. And so it was still a struggle, a big struggle. However, I was not homeless. I did not, have to file for bankruptcy. I thought I was going to have to, right? Like, with all the debt that I had accrued, I was like, there's no way for me to pay this off right now. To be honest, I just let everything default. And I was like, I'll figure it out when I can. And I spent a lot of the time literally just in bed, depressed, like legit, not able to get up, not able to function or find a job. And not only that, like, there's all kinds of, how do I want to say this? Like, the idea of getting a job when you're in the life coaching industry is shameful, right? Like, they're like, you want to be full time, like running your business full time, a full time entrepreneur is like the glamorous way to do it. Like, going full force, like I'm all in on my coaching business is like, you know, the only honorable way to operate your business. It's almost like I needed somebody to be like, it's okay to get a job. You know what I mean? Like, go find one. It's okay to like start something over, start something different. But like, alongside with all that other personal stuff that was going on for me, like it felt like I was, when my friend said, like Raggedy Ann, like in a washing machine, just like this rag doll being tossed around by everything. And so, like, what I did a lot that year was take care of myself and try to understand what had just happened to me, like with not only my career, but with my family life, with other things that were happening. I like was engaged and then I had broken off the engagement because it wasn't working out. There's just a lot that was really crumbling, you know? And so as all of this stuff was crumbling and I was shutting down my business and I had shame about getting a job and I had all this trauma that I was trying to deal with in a real way. It was like a lot. So I took that year to take care of myself, to get myself back on my feet, to start like repaying like my debts and lo and behold, I did it without a life coach or a business coach.
Can you believe it?
I would have never guessed. But I think maybe that experience for me was necessary to understand that I don't actually need all of those things that I was investing in to be able to find success in my career and in my emotional life. I don't need a mindset coach looking at my mind for me every week or whatever Brooke recommends, you know what I mean, for you to have a clean mindset. I'm like, lo and behold, here I am actually doing better than I have in the past 3 years and no coach to be seen anywhere. It's wild to get to this point because there was a lot um with that profession comes a lot of emotional baggage from like what I was going through, but from what my clients were going through that I was also taking on, not realizing I was taking it on. And then that, like I said, piled with the guilt and shame that happens when you realize what you've been doing to be able to sell is it's a lot to unpack.
And I think too, there's a piece in terms of identity.
Oh, yeah.
Like your identity is so heavily wrapped in what it is you're doing. And I think any entrepreneur, not even just coaching, but a lot of entrepreneurial pursuits can kind of fall into this, where it's like your identity is, I am Danielle and I am the coach. And so once you're like, okay, well, I'm not a coach anymore. Who am I? What am I? What am I doing? What is my purpose? And it gets very, very complicated to kind of unravel that piece as well.
Oh, yeah. The whole identity thing is like, well, I will say this. I still do coach, but I'm not coaching coaches. I'm not coaching on things that are not tangible, that are not real skills. I could call myself a teacher, to be honest, instead of like a coach, because I find myself teaching and I find myself like consulting on people's businesses and their social media, but not doing this weird like trying to get my client to feel good so that they could be in the right energy to be able to sell. Like there is none of that. So in the space where I'm working, right, it's closer to like teaching or consulting or something along those lines. I still use the word coach. For a long time, I was like, should I not use this word? Is it that triggering to me that I should like get away from it? But at this point, it doesn't bother me so much. I just realized that the things that I do on the day to day, the actions that I take, the conversations that I have, the way that I think is completely different from when I was like in the midst of all of it, my coaching business.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm in a similar position. I call it consulting just because I'm like, so do not want to be associated. That's just my personal choice. But, and like you're saying, like, I think the work that I do would be considered more the same thing, teaching, consulting. I'm giving practical strategies. I'm not telling you, imagine your business is successful. It's like, no, here's step 1, 2, 3 that you need to follow. And that's what you're going to learn. But I'm also not like, and then you'll make $10,000. No. We're not doing that here.
No. And like the crazy part too, right, is like the value. Like I remember not understanding that word going into the coaching industry. They're like, you have to give value in your marketing. And I'm like, what's this mean? I remember looking up the definition and being like, okay, I have to learn how to give value in my marketing. Like, what are you saying? What is that even, until you get to the nitty gritty of like copywriting in a manipulative way. Nobody wants to tell you that's what it is, but like give value.
There's someone I reacted to in one of my videos. Like this was one of my original videos from probably like January or February of this year. And they're in, again, this pyramid of people that we've talked about before. And she made this TikTok where she essentially was like, in order to charge higher prices, you have to give your clients more value. But in order to give more value, all you have to do is show up more confidently, because your confidence is valuable to the people that you're teaching. And I'm watching this video thinking, so I pay you $1,000, but next week, if you show up more confident, I have to pay you $2,000 because that's better for me. Like A does not equal B. Like that doesn't make any sense when you think about it, again, from a perspective of someone who's outside the coaching industry. But then I'm reading through the comments on this video and they're all like, oh my God, fire emoji, fire emoji. This is the best advice I've ever seen. And they're all like gassing this woman up. And I'm just like, oh my Lanta, how did we get here?
No, I mean, that's wild and not because I heard it, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
In the spaces that I was in,
It's
because
so
I'm like,
common.
I realize that what they're charging for is their confidence, because I'm like, you're not actually teaching me anything. And you're not willing to look at my marketing materials and audit me. You're not willing to actually give me real feedback or go through my programs with me to tell me, like, okay, this isn't blah, 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 or this is, do you know what I'm saying? It's not this real service that you do when you're actually providing a service.
And I think that comes from them like not knowing. And so if we go back to like you and I now as service providers, I literally did that yesterday. One of my clients sent me her sales page. I went through it on a Loom video and was like, tweak this. This doesn't make sense. Change this, change that. Because I have experience in marketing and I understand what sells. I'm not just telling you, oh, imagine the 3 people sign up for your program and they'll sign up. It's like, no, this is how you're going to get people to sign up. It's like, but they don't have that skill. Many of them don't. I'm not saying they all don't, but a lot of them don't.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's like a lot of like, it's all fluff. It is all fluff. That whole like, get people to sit in your energy. And
Believe
then,
your way to success.
yeah, just see them buying from you. It doesn't make any sense at all. It just drives me insane. So that's why it's like, what do I call myself now? Like, what is the skill set that I came away with, right? How do I then turn this into something useful for people and actually provide a service that's worthy of their hard-earned money, and like, how do I actually help them to improve their marketing, their social media, their like ability to reach an audience who actually wants to listen to them, who connects with them. It's none of this. I hate that term, like snake oil, but no one here that I'm working with now, particularly with the group that I'm working with, is like a very underrepresented group of entrepreneurs. You know what I mean? It's like not this typical space that I came from when I came from the coaching industry. And that feels really good to be working with people for a very fair rate. It's not my company, it's someone else's company who what they're doing, their business is not just this piece. They actually run a real business. It's very, very like, I don't know, I want to use the word aligned, but it's just it actually feels fulfilling to work in the space that I work in, because I know that what I'm doing isn't in the least bit manipulative. It's real. Like, what we're teaching is relevant, it's applicable, it's something that they are able to implement immediately, and we're seeing actual results, and in the form of money, not just feeling good after you get off of a call with me.
Unheard of. Oh my goodness. No, and I think that's really the piece as the like service provider, that at the end of the day, if you can confidently, go to bed at night being like, I'm making a real difference for people and I am doing the best with the knowledge that I have and the skills that I have to actually deliver a valuable service. I think if you can confidently say that, then to me, that's okay. But again, I guess that could get twisted of like, well, these coaches think that they're adding value and they're really not. So I don't know. I think just like what I'm doing now and what you're doing now, I feel like it's not comparable to this like fluffy, nothingness, no value cycle. But I'm sure we'll get comments anyway telling me.
I'm sure. I'm like, let's see, bring them on. Let's go. Do you ever have people guess who you're talking to? You're like, hey, is this person?
I've had, especially on like live streams, people will start like name dropping, putting links and whatever. I'm like, okay. We're not here to dox anyone. I am just stating vague experiences. But I have gotten a few emails of like, oh my God, I saw your video on like person XYZ, even though I didn't name them. Let me tell you the real tea. And I'm like, okay. Because again, if you're in the industry, you know. If you're not in the industry, these are just like, I've had people comment on, like Brooke Castillo's video being like, I've never even heard of this woman and I don't know what's happening. Whereas the rest of us are like, how could you have not heard from her? She is the like top of the pyramid. So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, you realize how niche we really are, or this industry really is, and like how in it you must have been, or we must have been to like know these names, right? Like it's true. No one knows who she is. None of my friends who are not coaches have any idea who I'm talking about if I say her name. So
even like me trying to explain this to my partner, who is a legitimate entrepreneur and has been for many years, and I tried to like describe to him, he's like, well, why would people pay for that mentorship? And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I had to like sit him down and kind of like go through, okay, this is this person, this is who Tony Robbins is, blah, 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 and like build back the pyramid and then explain it. And it's like, you don't realize how bizarre it truly is until you're out of it and you reflect back and you have these conversations with people that aren't in it.
somebody needs to make like a chart online where we can like actually like draw the lineages of people and see the pyramid, how big it gets and where people are like connected to each other, because that would be something that I would add to for sure.
I'll see if I can get access to that one that was sent to me, and we'll make it like a public document that people can mess around with.
So oh my goodness, so good. Yes, I like this idea.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here and chat with me and share your story. I know it can be incredibly overwhelming and scary, I think, again, and because there's so much shame associated with it, to have these conversations can be really hard. So I just appreciate you for having the time and the confidence and ability to come and openly share your story with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It actually feels better than I thought it would, because I will be honest and say that I was nervous. But yeah, it was great talking to you about this, especially somebody who understands what I'm talking about, what I'm actually saying, and the perspective that I have now versus then. This was great. So thank you.
Exactly. And I think too, just to kind of close this out for anyone that is watching that's maybe still kind of in it, it's like people like you and I don't look at anyone that's in the industry and think like, oh, I'm so much better than them now that I'm on the outside. It's like, I empathize with these people so much because when I was in it, I could not see it. And I had people in my life telling me, Danielle, WTF, like this doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, you just don't understand. And so it's like, I have been that person. I've been in that place. And to be on the outside is like, I consider it a privilege to have like survived the coaching industry relatively unscathed. Right. So I think it's really valuable that we have these conversations and we talk about these openly, just to let people know that they're not alone if they are still kind of caught up in the mix of it.
Oh yeah, keep going with these interviews and with the channel, because I think if nothing else, it like creates community for the people who are feeling that guilt and shame and not knowing how to get out or have just gotten out. And like, it's a place where you can really like feel like this depth of understanding with each other, which I think is really interesting, because like that's kind of what you feel like you're connecting to or with when you're in the industry and the other coaches. Yet here we're not paying each other to like
gas each other up. You're doing great. And it was free. I'll send you my PayPal link once we're done.
Perfect. I would expect nothing less.
I love it. Well, thank you so much again.
Well, thank you. This was great. Maybe I'll be back, take you on a tour of some other coaching programs.
I love it. If you're someone who has also been negatively impacted by the coaching industry, I would encourage you to fill out the Google form I have linked down below. Whether you want to just submit your scam story, you want to come on for an anonymous interview, I am always looking for people who are open and willing to share from their experiences. Thank you so much for making it this far in the video. You're the real MVP. If you haven't already, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I will leave you with this video right here next. Bye!